I used to love golf. My father taught me how to play, and I enjoyed the time we spent together. It brought us closer. I grew up in Eastern Virginia, so I was able to play about 9 months out of the year, sometimes more. I wasn't obsessed, but I enjoyed it. I was mostly an average player, but it depended on how much I practiced. My name is Rob, and I was mostly an introvert in school. I was what you would call a late bloomer. In 9th grade, I was 5 feet 3 inches, and by 11th grade, I was 6 feet 0 inches. I'm average looking, but most people who know me say I have a good sense of humor and an easygoing personality. I also lost my virginity late. It happened the summer before I started college. She was my girlfriend, and we did it together so we wouldn't be virgins anymore. It wasn't very romantic, and the sex was bad, but at least we both went to college with at least some sexual experience. College was a great time for me. I attended one of the largest universities in the state and really enjoyed my studies. I went to football games and met a lot of new people. I dated a lot of girls, but never found my soulmate. I had a girlfriend for almost a year, but she found someone she wanted to be with more than me. And although it hurt and my pride was hurt, I understood her. After college, I got a job at a bank and entered the next phase of my life. I had friends who introduced me to girls, but none of them seemed like the one. Over time, an old friend got married. I went to the wedding and reconnected with many other old friends. One of them introduced me to a very sweet petite beauty with brown hair. She was quiet and reserved, but I felt something for her from the moment I saw her. Her name was Sandra, and she was my age. That evening, I left the wedding thinking that Sandra was special. I didn't wait long to ask her out, and we started dating regularly. Soon I realized that I was in love. Sandra was very sweet and kind, and I began to think that we were meant for each other. This impression was reinforced by the fact that we could sit for hours and just talk. Sandra told me that she had had several boyfriends, but I was the first one she had truly loved. She also mentioned that, although she had kissed her previous boyfriends, she was still a virgin. As we continued dating and grew closer, I wanted to start a sexual relationship. She refused, saying she wanted to wait until we were married. About 9 months later, I finally asked her to marry me, and she said yes and was very excited. We told our parents, and she told all her friends. I was very happy too. While we were preparing for the wedding, I noticed that she had become more affectionate and touched me more often. I was willing to wait to have sex, but I thought she could help me get off in other ways. I just didn't want to demand her vagina or ass. So, although we didn't have vaginal sex, we did other things, and I got some relief. She learned to give amazing blowjobs, slow and teasing sucking that made my cock feel so much better. Although she never swallowed, she got better and better at oral sex and seemed to enjoy it too. I also gave her pleasure, as no one had ever licked her pussy before. I really enjoyed doing it. I liked seeing her get hot and wet after I played with her clit and her very tight little pussy. I was still very horny and couldn't wait for our wedding. Finally, the day came, we got married and started our life together. We both worked. She was a teacher and I worked at a bank. We didn't earn much, but everything was fine. We made love a lot and tried everything except anal sex. She still didn't swallow, but otherwise she gave me everything. We had been married for about 4 years when we decided to have children in the near future. We both agreed that at the end of the school year she would stop taking birth control pills, and hopefully we would start preparing for parenthood. As mentioned earlier, I continued to play golf with my regular foursome, playing every Saturday, and sometimes once a week during the week. Once a year, our area hosted a PGA tournament, and I always attended at least one day. Sometimes I volunteered and helped out for a couple of days. Our bank was also a sponsor, and most of the employees helped out with the event. It was always interesting to watch the pros play. Their talent was amazing. For those who have never volunteered, one of the rules was to never talk to the pros. We were supposed to help, but not interact with them. Most of the pros were friendly, but some were not, and you quickly learned to stay away from them. This year, I plan to go on Saturday and watch from behind the fence. My wife wasn't interested in golf, but I suggested she come with me to get some fresh air, as it was a beautiful day for a walk. After much persuasion, she finally agreed to go with me. We started watching various players that I found interesting. My wife wasn't thrilled, but she was good company and watched too. Later in the round, we watched a famous golfer who wasn't a favorite, but he was interesting to watch. He was mostly just trying to finish the round and sign his scorecard. As we stood behind the fence, he hit the ball, and it landed in the crowd. The ball bounced off my leg and came to rest in the grass. It probably saved him a stroke because we were close to where the ball would have gone out of bounds, and that would have cost him another stroke. When he and his caddy approached, we all parted like the Red Sea. I was standing right there with Sandra. When he came over and found his ball, some fans said that it was the ball that hit me that kept him in the game. He just laughed and whispered something to his caddy. I kept quiet and continued watching. The caddy handed him his club and he took a couple of practice swings. After the shot, he turned to my wife and thanked her for her help. The caddy winked and she just blushed. I asked her what that was, but she just shrugged. We followed the group to the green and stood behind them to watch. He made par and was about to leave, but whispered something to his caddy, who stopped and talked to Sandra as they walked away from the green. When I turned to leave, I saw that the caddy was still talking to my wife. I waited until the caddy caught up with the player and asked her what he had said. Sandra replied that he wanted to invite us to dinner after the game. I thought that was nice and assumed he considered it good compensation for hitting me with his ball. So I followed him until the end of the game. I noticed that he and his caddy kept looking at Sandra, laughing and winking at her. I love my wife and know that she is very attractive and that she looked gorgeous in her pretty golf shirt and tight shorts that accentuated her petite but curvy figure. One of the things I have always loved about Sandra was her large, puffy nipples. Today I could see them protruding and forming noticeable bumps through her shirt. She just kept smiling and following me. We stayed at the 18th hole and watched as a few more players approached. It usually takes a few minutes for players to sign their scorecards. After a few minutes, the caddy approached us and motioned for us to come over. He said there was a problem, and they only had room for one person for dinner. He asked Sandra if she would like to go with them. I shook my head and said we appreciated the offer, but we were leaving. The caddy told me to let her answer for herself, that dinner would be great, and he was looking forward to it. I was shocked when Sandra turned to me and said she would like to have dinner because she was hungry and tired and thought it was very thoughtful of him. I said, "What about me?" She replied, "Oh, honey, it won't take long. I'll be back soon. You can watch some more golf, and I'll relax and enjoy dinner. That way we both get what we want." Katie joined in. "Yeah, be a man. Let your wife enjoy her dinner." I was furious and said it was ridiculous, but she kissed me and said she'd be back soon. I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. Then the caddy picked up her rope for her, and she said she'd call me later when she was done, and the caddy walked her off. After she left, I realized that we had left our cell phones in the car because they weren't allowed on the course during the tournament. I called her, but the caddy told me to go watch some more golf and that she would call me from his phone when she was done. I was devastated and humiliated, watching the love of my life walk away from me, laughing and happy that she was going to dinner with someone else. Standing there, I could feel everyone looking at me. I heard one golf fan say, "That pro is a jerk for asking a married woman out to dinner." I decided I needed to leave and walk down the fairway away from the crowd. The further I walked, the harder I fought to keep my composure. It was almost 6 o'clock, and I figured that since they would need a couple of hours to eat dinner, I could wander around for a while. I went back to my car and grabbed my cell phone. It also occurred to me that since Sandra had left her cell phone behind, she might not even have my number. I knew I didn't have her number memorized, and always relied on finding it in my contact list. I was suddenly overcome with the feeling that she wouldn't be able to contact me, even if she wanted to. Although watching her leave, I thought she might not care whether I was there or not. As I continued to wander, I realized that the sun was already low in the sky. I didn't want to look at my watch, but it was already 7:30. Time was passing, and I realized that this was going to be the worst day of my life. How could my sweet, loving Sandra just throw me away like yesterday's trash? I loved her with all my heart, and we shared everything together. Now she was experiencing what I could never give her, an exciting lifestyle that is usually only available to the rich and famous. Finally, I decided that the best thing I could do was go back to the club and ask if anyone had seen them. Unfortunately, only players and guests were allowed in the club. I was alone again, and very angry that I had been abandoned. Around 8 o'clock, I returned to my car in the parking lot and decided it would be best to just leave. Sandra would probably call my home phone because that was the number she had memorized. Sandra wasn't a big drinker, but from what I heard, many professionals drank a lot. Probably their lifestyle was such that they were used to having more fun than we did. She drank little, and after a couple of glasses of wine or a couple of cocktails, she became much more relaxed. Now I was in a complete panic. I got in my car and drove home. The trip took about 45 minutes because of traffic, caused by many others also leaving the golf course. I kept my phone close to me and prayed that my wife would call. All possible scenarios ran through my mind. I entered our apartment at 9 p.m. I checked my messages, and the only message was from Sandra's mother asking if we wanted to join them for dinner that evening. Pacing around the room, I called the tournament headquarters and said I needed to talk to Sandra and that she was with a professional golfer. They just said they would pass the message on. When I said it was urgent, they said they would try to get in touch with him. Another hour passed, but there was no call or news. I was torn between worry and rage. I was just as angry at Sandra as I was at that jerk of a pro. Sandra had never given me any reason to worry about her love or loyalty. Now I was worried that she might have passed out and was in danger, or just having fun in the arms of another man, a famous, rich man. Who wouldn't want to experience a life of luxury that we could never afford? However, I couldn't understand why she had treated me so disrespectfully. Finally, just as I was about to fall asleep, the home phone rang. It was the professional. He said that Sandra had had too much to drink and needed to stay there until she sobered up. I was furious and told him I would come and get her. He replied that there was no need, as she was asleep and he would take her home when she woke up. I demanded that he put her on the phone. He just laughed and said he would try. A few minutes later, she came to the phone, and I told her I would come and get her. She replied, "No, Rob, I'm fine. I just need to rest. I'll come home later. I'm fine. He's taking me home. You go to bed." I told her she had to come home immediately or I would be there in 30 minutes. I asked her what she preferred and she replied, "Rob, you're embarrassing me. I'll come home later." Then she hung up. I hung up, not believing that my wife had told me to go to bed and that she would come home later. I looked at the caller ID and saw private. I tried calling back, but the number didn't answer. Now I was in deep trouble and hoped that Sandra wasn't in any kind of trouble. I went upstairs and just lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I lay there for what seemed like hours. I had to do something. I got up, found information about the professional golfer, and tried to find out everything I could about him. He was married, had 2 children, and a beautiful trophy wife. Why did he need mine? I thought about how I could contact his family. The chances were slim, but at least I was doing something. Then I decided I had to take action. If she wanted to humiliate me and probably fuck another man, I would make her life hell. I wasn't going to stay married to someone who was so easy to manipulate. I decided I had to leave. It was midnight. I packed a bag for a hotel, but I was very worried about Sandra and wanted to make sure she got home safely. I had mixed feelings. I wanted to make sure she was safe, and then I wanted revenge. I needed to find out what she had done. She had never lied to me, and I could usually tell when she wasn't being completely honest. If she had slept with that bastard, our marriage was over. If he had taken advantage of her, then maybe we still had a chance. However, when I spoke to her on the phone, she didn't sound drunk and she cursed at me in front of him. It was another humiliation. I thought that if she called after I left, I wouldn't be able to answer, but that seemed unlikely. She clearly didn't care where I was. So at midnight, I left Sandra's cell phone at home and went to a motel. I knew there were a few inexpensive motels near the highway, and I stopped at one of them. It was ridiculous because I had no intention of sleeping, but I lay down on the bed anyway. I must have fallen asleep for a while because when I woke up, the sun was already shining. It was 8:30 a.m. I got up, checked my cell phone, and found 4 messages. I had left it on but turned off the sound. Sandra had tried to call me at 3:40, 4:10, 5:30, and 7:15. I figured she had gone home after 3, and I was curious to know what she wanted to say. In the first message, she apologized. In the second, she sounded concerned, and in the last one, she sounded angry. By then, I was laughing. Where was her concern earlier in the evening? I just got up, took a shower, and went to have breakfast. I thought about what to do next. I needed to see her, but for now I knew she was home and safe, and that was more important to me because I still loved that stupid bitch. My phone rang, and I switched it to voicemail again. I glanced at it and saw that it was her mom. I loved her mom and dad, and they were always nice to me because they knew how much I loved their daughter. On Sundays, her parents usually went to church, and sometimes we went with them. We had plans to go to their house for dinner that evening. I finished breakfast and went back to my room. My departure was at 11 o'clock, so if I was going to stay, everything was fine. But if I was going to leave, I needed to get ready. I checked out of the hotel and then decided to go to the park and just walk around the trails. I hoped it would help me clear my head about what to do next. My phone rang a few more times, and I checked it but didn't answer. Sandra was probably worried because I hadn't left a note or anything after our conversation yesterday. The question kept running through my head. Did she sleep with him, or did she just have dinner and a drink? Either way, I think she chose him over me. She cheated on me because she was emotionally attached to him. I couldn't imagine her cheating, but I also couldn't imagine what she had done in the last 24 hours. I walked around for a few hours and my phone kept ringing. Once it was Sandra's friend, once it was my sister. There were also several calls from Sandra herself. I called my sister back. As my older sister, she always looked out for me, and I knew I could talk to her. My sister Sally answered and said, "Sandra is freaking out. Where are you?" I asked her, "Did she tell you what happened last night?" Sally replied, "She was at dinner, and you were watching golf and left." "Did she say anything else?" I asked. "No, nothing. Just that she didn't know where you were when she got home," Sally replied. I told my sister what had happened and that I had finally left the house after midnight. I was afraid that when she came home, I might hurt her. Sally was shocked. "She would never cheat on you, Rob. She loves you so much." I just said to my sister, "Ask her what she was doing from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. Sally was silent and said she would call her and find out the whole story if she could. I continued my walk, and about an hour later, my sister called me again. She said, "I don't know what happened, but she swears she didn't sleep with him." I told her that Sandra's word wasn't worth a damn right now. Sally understood, but said, "You still need to talk to her." I thought about it, but I needed more time to decide what I wanted to do. Stay with her or leave her. I went to a fast food restaurant to get something to eat, as I was hungry after my walk and all the worry. Sandra kept calling, and I finally decided I should call her back. Sandra answered the phone. "Rob, honey, I was so worried about you. I'm sorry. I didn't do anything to him. Please forgive me. Come home." I told her I'd be home soon, but I didn't think I could go to her parents' house. She could go by herself. She said no, she wanted to be with her husband, and he was the only thing that mattered to her. I laughed and hung up. Later that day, I returned to our apartment. I almost decided to go to the tournament to find my wife's lover, but I knew that would only cause more problems, so I just went home. I walked in the door, and there was Sandra with her friend Angela. Angela just hugged me and left as soon as I walked in. I wondered what that meant. Sandra stood up and walked over to me, but I held out my hand, and she stopped and started crying. I stood there motionless and just let her cry. I told her to sit down. "We have things to talk about." I brought her some water, she sat down on the couch, and I sat across from her so I could see her beautiful eyes. I loved this woman and thought about what life would be like without her. I told her I wanted to know everything that had happened during those 9 hours she had spent with that professional jerk. She started by saying that they went to a club and had dinner in the main hall. I asked if they were there alone or with the caddy. She replied that it was just the two of them, but there were a lot of people around. I asked if the table was so small that only 2 people could sit at it. She blushed and admitted that there could have been one more person sitting there. She said he was a gentleman, that many professionals approached them and that she was introduced to him. I asked her to continue her story. She said they ate and talked for a couple of hours and that he was a very interesting man. He had traveled to many countries and visited some interesting places. I just nodded and asked how much she had drunk. She said a couple of glasses of wine. They continued talking, and he invited her to his room, but she said it wasn't a good idea. They stayed there until almost 10, and after a couple more glasses of wine, she felt dizzy. He suggested again that she go to his room, where she could rest, and he would tell her more stories about his life as a professional golfer. My blood boiled, but I tried to remain calm. They went to his room, which Sandra said was very nice and beautiful. Around that time, he called me and said that Sandra was a little drunk and needed to rest. I asked if she was really asleep, and she shook her head and said no, but she didn't want me to come for her because he said he would take her home. I wanted to save you the trouble. Then Sandra remembered she was talking to me and said she shouldn't leave because he was being so nice to her. I almost exploded when I reminded her how she said I disgraced her and then hung up on me. "How do you think I felt when you were in his room and your weak husband was waiting for you at home?" She broke down and started crying again. This time, I got up, grabbed a lamp, and threw it against the wall, smashing it to pieces. She jumped up and ran out of the room, crying. I knew I shouldn't lose my temper, but I couldn't control myself. I waited about an hour, then went up to our room and told her to come down so we could finish our conversation. I really didn't want to hear the rest, but I had to. This story would determine whether my marriage would survive. She gave in and came back downstairs. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she spoke so softly that I could barely hear her. She said, "After I hung up, I felt so bad about what I said to you that I started crying, and Pro came over and hugged me." She noticed that I was angry again and quickly added, "That's all there was. He asked if I wanted more wine. I said no. He got up, poured himself another glass, and asked if it was hard for him without his wife and children. He said he missed them, but that this was the life he had chosen, and it was working out pretty well for him. He told me about his childhood, where he lived and went to school. He talked for a long time, and then asked if he could hug me for a minute because he had been away from his family for so long. I kind of shook my head, but he came over and hugged me for a moment. Then he kissed me on the cheek and tried to pull me closer, but I stood up. I told him I couldn't do that I loved my husband and couldn't do anything. I asked him if players often cheat when they're away. He laughed and said some do and some don't. I asked him if he had, and he said he had. I felt very uncomfortable, and he noticed and said, "Don't worry, no one will ever know whether we did it or not." I told him that I would know, and I couldn't live with that. "Rob, it's true, and I swear to God that I didn't do anything else. Please believe me." By that time, it was very late, and he said he would drive me home. We waited almost an hour for his car, and we kept talking. Finally, the car pulled up, and he drove me home. She looked at me intently and said, "Rob, I love you more than anyone could ever love another person. My heart beats for you, and we are so close in so many ways. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry." I just sat there silently, and she said, "Honey, please say something. I can't live without you." I asked, "What time did you get home?" She said 3:30. I looked her in the eyes and said, "What if I did that to you? If some woman invited me to dinner and I spent 9 hours with her, almost 5 of them in her hotel room, how would you feel?" She started crying again. I just shook my head and got up. I told her, "I need to take a walk. I need to think some more." I asked her, "Why did you leave me on the golf course? That was the most humiliating thing anyone who said they loved me has ever done to me. When the hell did you become so heartless?" She shook her head and just moaned. "I just thought you'd like to watch golf while I had dinner. Either you're the most callous person I know or you're the most naive, and by the way, he's not a gentleman. A gentleman wouldn't invite a married woman to his room. Besides, he lied when he said there wasn't room for another person at dinner. We're not going to your parents' house tonight. I'm going to get some pizza." Sandra had already told her mother everything. Her mother scolded her and said that if she had been there, she would have slapped her to bring her to her senses. When she told me about it, she burst into tears again. I went out to get pizza. My head was still spinning from what she had told me. Did she think I believed that nonsense? Or was she being honest and nothing like that had really happened? I was still confused. I called my sister again and told her what Sandra had said. My sister said that Sandra had told her almost the same thing. Then I decided to call Angela and see if she had anything to add. I told her that we hadn't finished talking and I wanted her to tell me what Sandra had said. Angela said that Sandra had told her that they had never touched each other except when he hugged her and kissed her goodbye. I asked if it was a passionate kiss, and Angela said that according to Sandra, it was a quick kiss on the lips, but nothing passionate. I picked up the pizza and went home. When I arrived, I asked Sandra if he was handsome. She was a little surprised, but said yes, he was cute, but that was all. I continued to ask her more direct questions. "Did you get turned on when you were talking to him?" She replied, "It was interesting to hear about his lifestyle, but I wasn't sexually aroused." She blushed. I wondered what that meant. "Did you realize he wanted to sleep with you?" She replied, "I'm sure he did, but I turned him down and he didn't pressure me." I asked, "Could you tell he was excited?" Sandra blushed and said, "No, I don't think so, and if he was, I didn't notice. Please, Rob, nothing happened. I love you very much. Please don't think I betrayed you. I didn't." I had to confirm Angela's words, so I asked, "Did he kiss you goodbye?" She nodded but said, "It was a quick kiss on the lips and a short hug, nothing more. Rob, I'm sorry I put myself in that position and did that to you. You don't deserve to be hurt by anyone. You're the sweetest, kindest man I've ever met. I was just acting like a teenager in the presence of a famous person. It was interesting, but not sexual in any way. At least not with me." We ate in silence, sighing occasionally. The phone rang, but neither of us answered. We just let it go to voicemail. Her mother called, then Angela, and then my mother. Everyone was busy with family gossip tonight. I decided to talk to my mother, since Sally had already told her everything, and said we were talking. My mother reminded me that she had always loved Sandra very much, and thought we were made for each other. "Thanks, Mom. I'll call you back later." Sandra and I were both exhausted because neither of us had slept much of the night. I was planning to take Monday off, and she was preparing lessons for her substitute. We worked in different rooms. When it got late, I didn't know where to sleep. I decided that I could sleep on the pull-out couch and she could sleep in the bed. She begged me to lie down with her. She said that even though she knew I was angry, she really needed my company just to lie next to her. "Please," she begged. I wanted to get a good night's sleep and thought it might be better to sleep separately. She just nodded and said she understood. Finally, I told her that if she slept with him, it would continue because I wouldn't be there. She said again that nothing had happened and that she was willing to do anything to prove it. Then she suddenly remembered that he had given her his cell phone number and told me to call him. I looked at her and thought about it. The tournament had just ended, and I wondered if I could talk to that jerk. Then I thought he was probably already on his way to the next tournament and wouldn't answer the phone. She suggested I call him tomorrow or whenever and ask. She seemed happy with that suggestion. That meant that they had either rehearsed their answers in advance or she was telling me the truth. I said I'd think about it, and we both went to bed. I don't think we slept any better than the night before. But when I woke up, she was making breakfast. I could smell coffee and bacon. During the week, we rarely had time for a proper breakfast, so this was a treat for us. For a moment, I was happy, but then reality set in and I took a shower, shaved, and went to the kitchen. She was wearing cute shorts and a simple t-shirt. I realized she wasn't wearing any underwear. I almost got angry, but then I decided I could just enjoy the view. We had a nice breakfast, chatting about various topics. When we finished, she said to me, "Rob, there is no other man in the world I want more than you. No one. The other day, I lost my mind and acted like a child. You didn't deserve that, and I will never let myself hurt or embarrass you again. You mean so much to me, and I will tell everyone I know, all my friends and family, how I behaved, and that I will do everything I can to keep you. Can you forgive me?" I looked into her beautiful eyes and said, "Yes, but I'll need time to rebuild my trust. I love you, Sandra, and I still don't want to live without you." With that, I hugged her and held her close. Sandra and I continued to live together, but in separate rooms for a while. I did call the prostitute on her cell phone, and to my surprise, she answered. I told her who I was. She told me the same story Sandra had told me. Nothing had happened. I felt a little better. We also started seeing a psychologist to see if we could get our marriage back on track. We found a psychologist named Dr. Jean Thomas. She had all the necessary qualifications, but I was a little wary because the first 2 sessions were more about me and my unwillingness to forgive Sandra than about her behavior. During the 3rd session, when she started asking if my ego was bigger than my marriage, I got angry and said, "Why do counselors love to belittle men for their egos, but never see a problem with women's vanity? You seem to think that my wife did the right thing by having dinner alone with another man and visiting his hotel room. Even if nothing sexual happened, it was completely unacceptable. But you don't question her motives or desires." With that, Sandra began to cry. Dr. Thomas apologized and said that during her private conversation with Sandra, she had discussed the inappropriateness of her behavior. She also mentioned that her job was not to take sides, but only to determine whether reconciliation was possible. Sandra said, "Rob, I know I was wrong about everything. I will forever torment myself for hurting you. I love you, and I am very sorry for what I did to you. Please understand that I fully acknowledge my bad behavior." After that, I calmed down. When the session ended, I wondered if I would ever be able to get over the pain I had experienced. I asked her if Pro had told her she was attractive. She blushed and said yes, and that she was pleased that another man found her attractive. I said, "I tell you this every day, and you don't seem to take my words seriously, but when someone else says it, you react so strongly." She replied, "Rob, I know you love me, but sometimes when someone else says it, it becomes more real to me. It's always nice to hear that other people think I'm beautiful." We returned to our normal work schedule, and gradually our relationship began to improve. When Sandra started the new school year and we became very busy again, the pain seemed to gradually fade away. Not completely, but partially. We were still making love, but we decided to wait with the children until we both felt we had gotten rid of our demons, and she readily agreed that it was her fault. Finally, one Friday evening, her parents invited our family over for a barbecue. My sister and her family came, as did my parents. Sandra stood up and addressed everyone. She confessed everything and asked everyone to forgive her for cheating on her husband. It was sincere, she was crying, and everyone was moved by her genuine feelings, including me. I stood up, hugged her, and held her close. That night, we made love for the first time, and we both felt that we had finally overcome Sandra's mistake. I truly love her, and she loves me, and I hope there will be no more problems. I asked her if I could have dinner and spend an evening with another woman, just once if I didn't have sex. Tears welled up in her eyes, and I told her that I might never take advantage of that right. I may have forgiven her, but it's hard to forget when someone you love hurts you so deeply. Epilogue. 5 years later. I've been playing golf less lately because we have a daughter and a son, and I spend most of my weekends with my family. Our life is wonderful again, and Sandra has expanded her sexual repertoire so that everything is now included, much to my delight. After I almost lost her and dealt with my anger, we returned to our old life and had 2 beautiful children. By the way, I never went back to the golf tournament. I recently read an article that the professional player got married for the 3rd time. I wonder how many marriages he has destroyed. Fortunately, not mine. I have experienced issues with appearance insecurities throughout my life. I am not the image of a romantic hero that most women have in mind. I am 190 centimeters tall, and my weight is close to 136 kilograms, which means that I am heavily overweight. But I am lucky to have little fat on my body. I have a certain nose prominence and deep-set, narrow eyes. I have a full set of teeth and a head of hair, but these facilities do not contribute much to my general appearance. As a heavy equipment operator, I work hard and keep my hair short and sand-colored because it is practical. I keep it clean and off my eyes. In spite of these perceived imperfections, I count myself lucky to have married Loretta, a great woman whom I have spent my life with. She might not be a typical beauty, but to me she is just perfect. She is only 5 feet 2 inches tall and is thus petite by my standards, but she has never been unsupportive, and in fact would tease me affectionately regarding my abrasive personality, which I never took offense at. The relationship we share has enabled me to have a comfortable feeling around her. We got married at a young age and we have 2 children, our son Brian, who is 16 years old, and our daughter Monica, who is right behind him at 15 years old. Fortunately, they took after their mother more than me in both aspects. They are smart and well-behaved, which makes me a proud father and a happy husband. I have been working at a heavy equipment firm that is owned by my Uncle S. My uncle is the person who oversees the activities, but we also do our best. Any profit left over at the end of the year that is not used in purchasing new equipment is divided amongst the family members to make an amicable agreement. Loretta was able to get a job in a small company which deals with real estate appraisal to banks and investment firms. Though she is not the one who does the appraisals, she performs typing, filing, and data entry efficiently. Life was good, and I always tell myself that I ought to have left well enough alone. But a perfectly casual remark set off an anxiety underlying wave in me. I saw a bruise on the neck of Loretta one day that looked like a hickey. I should have usually made some light-hearted comment, but I did not do it this time. And had it been a hickey, I knew it was not mine. It might have been a bug bite or an ingrown hair, but the efforts of Loretta to cover it up with makeup at home had me confused. Although I might appreciate the reason why she would want to conceal it when going out, I found it suspicious why she would want to do the same in the privacy of our own home. Supposing Loretta was doing it with another person, it was probably during the daytime because she never went out at night when I was not around. This thought haunted me one whole week, and the mark did disappear, but the remembrance remained. Our sex life had been not bad as a rule. I cannot say that I was as romantic as I might have been. Still, I always surprised her with flowers on no special occasion and never forgot her birthday or our anniversary. We often ate out and went to the plays and movies when we could. We had annual family vacations to places that were memorable. I did not only appreciate her as my wife, but as my life partner. But my doubts ate me up because of a stupid red spot on her neck. Since work was comparatively slow, Uncle S very nicely gave me a couple of days off. Not knowing just what it was I was really looking for, or what I was going to do, I determined I would go ahead and follow Loretta and see what would happen. I borrowed a car key of a colleague to get a crossword puzzle book to kill time. I followed her 2 days in a row to work, during lunch, and back home. On the second day, I started to feel stupid about my behavior, but then, on the third day, everything changed. Loretta had departed the office a little early, perhaps at lunchtime, however. She did not go to her car. She went around the side of the building. Behind her, a white four-door company car arrived, and she got in the passenger seat. I acceptably responded initially. Maybe she was just having lunch with a colleague. But this took a twist when the car headed into the parking area of a small, shabby motel close to the highway exit. One of the men in the car I knew was Tom, one of the appraisers Loretta had worked with. He had already a key. The two went into the room as though they were very familiar with each other, and they pulled down the curtains and closed the blinds. Unfortunately, I had not expected such a thing, and I was left wondering what my next step should be. Reflectively, I could have waited until Loretta got home that evening and talked about my worries with her. But my feelings got the best of me. I got out of the car and walked towards the motel door. It was an old wooden door. Although it was locked, the screws could be easily knocked out of the frame with a good push. It was about 10 minutes since they came into the room. I requested one of the maids to make an emergency call to 911, and she did so without batting an eyelid. I resolved to wait 5 minutes and then to force the door, but becoming impatient, I did so after 2. I shouldered my way against the door, and the lock came out, and the hinges tore off the wall. It was the sound of the door crashing down that caused Loretta and her companion to jump out of bed, both being naked. As I am unable to control my emotions on seeing my wife and another man, I grabbed Tom by the neck before he could even clearly understand the situation. And my rage broke out. He was aware that Loretta was a married woman, and I blame him and her equally in the betrayal. My wife had never seen this aspect of me. Tom never rebounded back to the first hits, which broke some of his ribs. Thereafter, he was incapacitated and was not able to move or breathe, and I systematically vented my spleen, attacking each portion of his face and body till he was a bloody pulp. Loretta screamed at me to halt and tried to interfere, but my elbow accidentally caught her in the mouth and she went sailing across the room, bleeding copiously 6301. At this instance, the whole thing turned black. The next time I came to myself, I was in the back seat of a police car handcuffed. Tom was being carried on a stretcher by paramedics, and Loretta was standing next to the ambulance, her lip being dressed and her body covered with a motel sheet. She spotted the police car, and on fantasizing that I was inside the car, shed tears. She was taken back to the room with a female officer, and the police car was leaving the motel parking lot. I did not dispute the charges or advocate a lawyer. Justice was quick. Because I had told the maid to call 911 before she broke down the door, they considered my actions as premeditated. The result was 2 years' imprisonment. The only family member who came to see me before I got transferred to state prison was my brother Louis, and he said he would come back when things simmered down. My new setting was okay to handle, especially when the news circulated about the reason as to why I was in prison. It was 10 days before Louis came to visit me. "I wanted to take you cigarettes, John," he said, jestingly, "but I recollected that you do not smoke." He made a joke and relaxed the atmosphere. Yet I changed the topic soon. "Say out, Louis. So what is going on at home? Nobody has said anything, and I am hearing rumors only." His answer was morbid. The situation is bad. The children and the family are devastated, and Loretta has been confining herself in the house. Brian and Monica are staying at Mom and Dad, yet they plan to come back by the end of the week. Loretta has not spoken to anybody, not even to her sister Joyce, whom she would not allow to enter. Does she talk to the children? No. They have tried to get in touch, but she is not responding to them. She probably will never tell anyone what really happened. Is this woman working? I inquired. No, she has not gone out of the house. Soon she will have no food left. Who is taking care of the bills? Louis shrugged. I will make Brian see if he can work something out this week. Monica insists on going back home. What of the man? I pressed. His name is Tom Bostic. He is still in hospital and is expected to be there at least another 2 weeks. I became more frustrated. I did not beat him much. Why is he still in hospital? John, Louis answered, you gave some serious wounds. He has severe internal injuries besides broken ribs and a fractured collarbone. I do not know all the details, but it appears to be his kidneys and spleen, and he cannot eat without a tube. One of his eyes is also problematic. I guess I lost my head, I said. It does indeed seem so. I believe I should talk to the children. Next time you come, will you bring them again? Louis agreed. When he moved away, I made a list of things I thought had to be done at home, around what Louis had told me about the condition of Loretta. I also had the responsibility to keep some kind of normalcy until the kids finished schooling. Brian and Monica showed up 5 days later. Louis did not happen to be around when Brian and Monica came. Where is your uncle? I asked. I was answered proudly by Brian, who had stolen my mother's car out of the office. He had to go to work. We chose to come here on our own. Curiously, I asked, what was she doing at the office? She has been there since the day of your arrest. Mom never took her up. Since then, she has not driven or left the house. A feeling of anxiety came over me. Oh, is she all right? Monica shook her head and looked down. No, she does not speak. She simply walks around the house, refuses to answer any questions or lift the phone. The answering machine is complete. I have attempted to pick up all the calls, but just by the family members. Even reporters have been phoning. Will you be all right there? Or you prefer to remain with the grandparents? I asked. I guess we will be all right, Dad. We simply have to fall into some sort of routine, Brian answered back confidently, making me feel that my children were gaining control of the situation. The next hour was spent on how they would cope, and I volunteered to make all the utility bills automatic payments since I was still getting my salary. I explained to Monica to use the bank card of her mother to withdraw cash and to pay other bills since it was also a debit card, which would simplify matters. Brian would do housework and maintain the cars as well as assist Monica with cleaning and cooking. It appeared that Loretta still could take care of herself, but had no interest anymore in communicating with anyone. Monica also said that Loretta had become obsessed with the need to clean and keep the appearance of the house in order, and was continuously dusting off things and moving them around without any visible rhyme or reason. I was unable to determine whether this behavior was a good one or a bad one. Before they went, I requested Monica to inform her mother that I needed to discuss with her what had transpired. She said she did not think Loretta would be willing to do that, but she would try. Unluckily, Loretta never visited me in jail, called or wrote. Monica and Brian tried reaching out to her a couple of times. They even called upon the services of Loretta's sister, Joyce. 6 months have elapsed and things had died down, but I have not received an explanation as to what transpired between my wife and I. Brian, Monica, and Louis came to see me often, and a couple of my co-workers took some time off to come and mock me, which made the time passable. Divorce proceedings were instituted against Tom Bostic by his wife 2 weeks after he got injured. He had a problem of 2 children to support plus alimony and house payments. After leaving the hospital, he was taken to a rehabilitation facility, and his bills started piling up beyond his insurance plan. As a result of this, he went ahead and sued me, something that had soon escalated and turned into a complicated mess that I was unable to easily get out of. Uncle S luckily stepped in. The lawyer of the company made counterclaims on Bostic within a week, alienating my family, and also against the firm that Bostic and Loretta were working at. The attorney was aggressive and convincing, and the outcome was that all the demands of both sides fizzled out. I received nothing and was not obliged to spend money either. After 3 months, things had not completely changed at home. Brian has finished school and joined the Air Force and is leaving in a month. Monica had just gotten her driver license, and they thought that his going away would not cause much problem. But Loretta continued to fail to pick up the phone and leave the house. As much as she was not making Monica suffer, that kind of situation could not last. Loretta started to block any communication or visits by Monica whenever she attempted to visit me or talk to me on the phone. Monica began to come and see me independently of Brian and occasionally with Louie. One day I was surprised by the visit of Joyce, which confused me because I had not seen her very recently. I had been almost a year in my sentence, and Loretta had taken to being a recluse, neither coming nor touching me or anybody. I spent many hours thinking over the situation. Loretta never apologized or asked me to forgive her, and she never stated the reason she was unfaithful. She did not suggest any compromise solutions or admit that something went wrong. I got the impression that I was unimportant to her. This absence of acknowledgement of my emotions implied that she did not think that I deserved her time or attention. I was crushed between her finger and the nail on the windshield of her car, or I was a piece of litter on the bottom of her shoe, something she could readily step on after she had finished her difficulty with me. Further into the time, I became more and more overwhelmed with the feeling of anger. Tom Bostic was out of rehabilitation and lived in a one-room apartment close to his job. Louis told me that Bostic was lame and had a tick in his right eye, which fired a spark of pity in my breast until Monica revealed to me appalling news. Monica went through her mother's purse in search of the doll and found a prepaid cell phone inside whilst Loretta was taking a shower. Worryingly, there was only one number saved in the phone. Monica wrote down the number, and it made my flesh creep. Judging by the situation, there was no chance of being reconciled to Loretta. And yet the idea that she could be possibly still communicating with Bostic made me angry. Then, 2 weeks after, I got some unexpected news. 127 inmates would be released early, including me. I did not experience any problems with my stay in prison. I had a job to go back to on the outside, and I was a first-time nonviolent offender. What else do I want? Louis and Monica picked me up, and I decided to move in with my parents in the meantime to give Loretta time to adjust to having me around. This was a precaution, I felt, unnecessary. Loretta was out of the house, to my astonishment the first time she had been out in a year. She had not told anybody or left a note, and a hurried survey showed that she had taken the greater part of her things with her. I deliberately did not want to face Loretta regarding her unfaithfulness, and she also appeared to avoid me. I expected her to explain, but should she still refuse to speak to me after I came back, then I would be left in the dark. I was also able to learn that Tom Bostic had resigned his job that week, and this gave even an added mystery to the situation. I chose not to go back to my parents, but went back to the house of Monica, where she was glad to see me back, now that she had a stable boyfriend. This progression also implied that I spent my evenings alone, which was a significant change in comparison to my earlier life. I never thought I would miss my cellmates. Any kind of company was preferable to being alone. I came back to work a week later, and it was like I had never been away. I also experienced some sort of responsibility to my Uncle S and his family, where I voluntarily accepted overtime. Amazingly, I had lost my appetite to beer in the last 1 year. It no longer satisfied my thirst as before. I had never liked hard liquor, so I had to decrease to drinking lots of cola and iced tea, disregarding the jokes of my co-workers. I was sitting one night thinking about Loretta and Tom Bostic, and suddenly I was engulfed with the humiliation they had brought upon me. I did not even know Bostic properly, but I did not at all deserve the kind of treatment that I had got at the hands of my wife. I never treated Loretta mean. I was always respectful and loving, and never did anything to make her despise me. Inside my heart, I knew that Loretta did not really hate me. She just wiped me off her shoulder. It was a humiliating realization. My colleague Marcy did the best she could to help me, but it was not much she could do. I was happy that she had met people to spend time with after the difficulties of the prior year, but I also wanted to give her the time needed to reconnect. I tried hard not to display my depression at home or in the workplace. The more I gave myself to work, the less I cared to think of Loretta, and when I went home at the end of the day, I was too tired to brood over my emotions. One Sunday afternoon, I determined to go and visit Joyce, the younger sister of Loretta. I did not exactly understand her reasons, but I welcomed her visits whenever I was in prison. I used to wonder whether I could have been more outgoing during her visits, and possibly she would have come back. "Hello, John, I am glad to see you. I was told you are back home." "Hello, come in," she greeted me. "Do you want some beer or coffee?" I went into the kitchen behind her. "That would be nice coffee." "I could guess the reason of your visit," I said, feeling that there was something more serious behind. "I cannot do much, but I will assist in any way I can." Joyce put 2 hot cups on the table and sat opposite to me. "You are correct, John. I cannot help you. I have questioned Loretta a number of times in various ways concerning you, and each time she either paid no attention to me or turned the conversation." "I figured she was not speaking to you," I said. "Last week she did not even want to look at me. And then quite suddenly, she wanted to speak." There was a moment of silence, and it seemed as though Joyce was about to impart some knowledge, but was afraid to say something too revealing. "Why did you go to Graterford, Joyce?" I asked. "I am not sure. I thought Loretta had framed you or something, and you did not deserve that. You know you did not look very glad to see me, so I did not come again. I'm sorry." I was still sore. I did not know why you came, and I did not know what to do about it. I suppose I was too sensitive. "I still do not know what happened," Joyce said with a soft sigh, except what I read in the papers. I put my coffee aside and permitted a little laugh to come out. "It's simple. She had an affair. I intercepted them and I roughed up the guy. That is the end of it." "Oh, but you were in prison a year, were you not?" "I would rather consider it as a vacation. It was more than one of those goddamn cruises." Both of us tried to laugh off the situation, but it did not work. "What are you doing here, John?" "Where is she?" I insisted, seeking a simple response. "In Reno." The words sounded me like a blow. I had put the question and got the answer I feared. Loretta approached me to discuss my divorce. I did not know what to say, so I could not help her. "Why?" I inquired, with beating heart. "That she wants a divorce because she does not want to see you or talk to you because she is fed up with you." I said to her that could not be done here. Joyce continued. She looked somewhat angry. She had no desire of moving to Nevada due to the residency requirements, but she felt she had no choice. Her company has an office in Reno. The boy she was going out with, Tom or whatever, could get a job there. She will file for a divorce the moment she has spent enough time there. Everything fell into place. It was logical, though I did not like it. I cannot imagine why she did not do it when I was in prison. She might have forwarded me the papers, and I would have been very happy to sign them and send them back to her. Joyce said. She was too long in waiting and had put herself in the line. "What have I done?" I asked with desperation in my voice. She just smiled and went out without replying. She most likely concluded that I was not good enough. I hope she would have told me before we married. "Then you wouldn't, isn't it, Brian and Marcy?" she said, and smiled grimly. "My husband was a bastard, John, though he was handsome. That is a poor motive to marry. I shall never do that again." I suppose I shall have to find a divorcee who had a good-looking husband. Next time, I may be fortunate. It was after I said something that I realized how stupid it made me sound. Abashedly, I rose and thanked Joyce, coffee, and talk, as I guessed the real reason of her coming to me. I was not only ugly, but seemed retarded as well. As I went, Joyce seemed to be a bit embarrassed, and I felt awkward. I reserved a week in a Caribbean cruise and handed the ticket to Louis as I knew he would enjoy the vacation at my cost. I in turn borrowed his car, as I did not want him to know about my plans. I drove to Reno in 3 days, and there found an empty house east of Sparks, which had been foreclosed. I had Tom Bostic come and appraise it, because I knew he would come with his notebook and tape measure. 30 minutes after that, he found himself in the trunk of the car belonging to Louis and headed east. I went about 30 miles out of Winnemucca, and then I discovered an unmarked dirt road. Where it turned out I had no idea, but I did not go more than a mile. When I put Tom in the trunk, he was still breathing, but he had lost consciousness sometime during the drive. It was regrettable, as there was more that I wanted to talk with him. I found a small ravine with a lot of rocks and thick vegetation, took off his watch, wallet, cell phone, and then tossed his body in the ravine. Somebody would find him out sometime, although the coyotes and other animals would have plenty of him first. I pressed on eastward and was relieved at having got over the humiliation I had suffered. I never thought of myself as a vengeful person, but the situation had transfigured me. I went into a casino at Elko and dropped off Tom's wallet in the men's restroom and was sure that someone would find it and run the credit cards and not report them stolen. The watch was nothing special, so I threw it away. As I crossed the Utah state line, I wondered if I would call Joyce when I got home. Nothing would probably result, but I would at least be able to take her to dinner in a restaurant. I was optimistic until my cell phone rang. The screen showed the number that Marcy had called me with. It appeared that I would get an opportunity to speak to my wife after all. "Where the hell are you, Tom? Tom, do you hear? Answer me." I was betrayed by my hoarse voice, which gave me away. I said, "Sorry, wrong number." Then I listened long enough to hear my wife say, "Oh my God, no." Out of frustration, I threw the cell phone out of the car window. A few days and I would be home, and I was hoping that Louis was enjoying my vacation. I didn't expect it, but at least she had the decency to talk to me instead of stalling until I caught up with her. I really didn't know what to say. Was I angry? Yes. Was I confused? Yes. Was I going to try to stop her? No way. "George, I'm not being unreasonable. If you feel you need to, get a lawyer. All I'm asking is that you continue to pay for the children's college education. Other than that, I don't want anything except my clothes and jewelry." I just sat there holding the divorce papers. I didn't open them or even look at them. Why should I? Linda had already moved her things out of the house, and I hadn't even noticed. I didn't say anything, but she kept talking. She did that when she was nervous. She tried her best to look calm and confident, but the stream of words pouring out of her mouth gave her away. I looked at the papers and smiled to myself. I think she noticed and started talking faster. Standing up, I threw the envelope on the coffee table. "Just go." "I understand. Goodbye." At least she stopped talking. She hesitated a little when I went to the kitchen to get a cold beer. Instead of finishing what she was going to say, my wife turned and walked out of the house for the last time. 10 minutes later, after I had opened a second bottle, I glanced at the bag she had left behind. It was simple and neat, just as she had said. She had also included a power of attorney so that I could sell the house. We had just taken out a second mortgage to pay for college for our 2 sons, Robert and Glenn. If I sold the house now, I wouldn't even be able to cover the real estate agent's commission. So what led to the abrupt end of a 20-year marriage? An old love. Cameron Wright was her first. Linda and Cameron had been a couple for many years, even before I met her. She often mentioned him in the past, and some of our mutual friends over the years had made comments about him. I ignored it. He was her ex-boyfriend. So what? Now I know it was more than that. I must have been sitting there for a while because I noticed that the room was getting dark. I knocked over 3 empty glasses as I reached for the lamp on the table. At that moment, the doorbell rang. "Damn, what now?" I muttered under my breath. "George, I just found out what she did. Billy told me to come over and see how you were doing." It was Linda's sister, Grace. I always liked Grace. In fact, I loved her more than Linda. I guess I'd had too much to drink and couldn't think straight. Billy was my best friend. I should have been kicked in the ass for even thinking that way about his wife. I shook my head as if there was water in my ears in a futile attempt to clear my thoughts. Grace took me by the arm and led me into the kitchen. I resisted a little because she was treating me like I was disabled. I didn't need any help. The fluorescent lights hurt my eyes, but I just squinted. How much beer had I had? I drank about half of the coffee before I realized Grace wasn't saying anything. "Are you feeling better, George? Can we talk?" "Give me a minute. I need to use the bathroom." When I came back, she poured me some more coffee. "So, Grace, tell me about my loving wife and Cameron Wright. When did this start? Your stupid brother-in-law only found out about it this afternoon." "Don't be too hard on yourself, George. I always thought she still loved that jerk, even after your wedding." "It would have been nice if you had told me that 20 years ago." Be realistic. I couldn't get involved. I just hoped that she would forget him over time. You two seemed like such a happy couple. Grace, it wasn't as good as it seemed. I realize now that our relationship was mostly platonic rather than romantic. I tried for years, but I never really managed to melt her heart. Flowers, candy, and jewelry didn't help. We got along well and rarely argued. Now I understand why. You hid it well. Thanks. Can I have some oatmeal cookies from the jar behind you? My stomach is growling. So tell me, sister-in-law, what made my wife leave me? I don't know if you remember, but Cameron dropped out of school and joined the Air Force. Right after that, you and Linda started dating. Cameron was Linda's first girlfriend, if you know what I mean. I nodded and shrugged at the same time. Girls never forget their first love. Anyway, she was really upset when he left. She wanted a family and children. I think she chose you to help her with that. I thought she made a good choice. I had no idea she was just using you until that jerk came back. Hell, I don't even think she knew he was coming back. So why did he come back? He served 20 years in the Air Force and retired with the rank of major. Linda says he has a good pension and several good management positions in the area where he can start a second career. She told me about it and sounded really proud. She talked enthusiastically about his great military career as if she were part of it herself. To be honest, George, it sounded a little crazy. I suppose she's living with him now? He's renting an apartment in Berkshire Heights until he finds a suitable house in the area. Linda has moved in with him full-time. How long has he been back? I'm not sure, but I think about 3 weeks. He called her as soon as he got to town. So that stupid George has been a cuckold all this time. It looks like it. I'm sorry. Grace tried to refill my coffee cup, but I waved her away. I don't need any more coffee. All I want right now is to take a shower and get some sleep. Thanks for stopping by, Grace. Lock up when you leave. My sister-in-law did look sad when I left the room. I was glad the boys weren't home. It would have been awkward to explain what had happened. They would find out eventually, but I hoped I would have pulled myself together by then and not look so miserable. My career choice wasn't particularly ambitious, but I liked my job. I was in charge of the fruit and vegetable department at a large supermarket in the area. For the past 10 years, the company had been trying to move me into a management position, but I didn't want to work long hours and take on more responsibility. Now it didn't matter anymore. The next morning, I called my district manager and told him I was ready for a promotion. That same day, I was assigned to manage a new store 10 miles from my home. I underwent 3 days of training in Baltimore and then started work. In my spare time, I told the boys about the divorce, put the house up for sale, and transferred all my credit cards and bank accounts. Linda's car was in her name, but the insurance was in my name. I emphasized the word was. Getting the new store up and running took up a lot of my time. I didn't mind because it took my mind off my personal problems. The company was pretty well organized, so most of the challenges I faced were easily resolved. During the first 2 weeks, we had several professional store opening specialists working with us. That was a big help. They trained most of the new store employees. Half of them were experienced workers who had been transferred from other stores in the area. I felt comfortable in my new job and was confident in my abilities. Soon, everything settled down. Everything was under control and running smoothly, so I had time to take care of my personal affairs. Since I was planning to rent a small apartment near the store, I started getting rid of everything I no longer needed in my house. I just gave most of it away. There were several agencies in the area that were willing to take almost everything I wanted to get rid of. Of course, the first thing I got rid of was the marital bed. It gave me great pleasure to get rid of the wedding photos and family albums. I kept a small collection of photos of the boys. Billy called and insisted that I come over for a barbecue the following Sunday. He promised that Linda wouldn't be there. He also wanted to tell me the latest news about Cameron Wright, the local war hero. The barbecue was nothing special. Billy's 2 daughters, Grace and Grace, showed up briefly but quickly disappeared. It was basically just an opportunity for Billy and me to chat. Grace spent most of the day serving us cold beer and cleaning up after Billy, who had invaded the kitchen. "Okay, Billy, what do you know about Mr. or should I say, Major Wright?" "All I know, George, is what he says at the Foreign Veterans Hall. Cameron and Linda go there a couple of times a week. He's all arrogant and friendly. The kids seem to be into it, but I think they're just impressed because he's new blood to them. Hell, most of the guys who go there are over 60. And what's my loving wife doing while he's bragging?" Linda usually just stands there smiling. She seems proud to be with him. She never acted like that when we were together. "Damn it, George. You're not a war hero." Billy couldn't help laughing when he said that, but I didn't find it funny. "George, he wears a baseball cap with a major's insignia sewn on it. He even has a gold oak leaf badge on his car. He tries so hard to impress everyone as a high-ranking officer." There was something I didn't like about Major Wright. I finished my beer just as Grace brought us a couple more. "Billy, Cameron didn't even finish high school. How did he become an officer? If I remember correctly, the old Mustang program was discontinued years ago. Now you need a college degree to get a commission. How did that bastard get a college degree when he wasn't even smart enough to get a high school diploma?" "Good question. I don't know the answer." "Did he really join the VFW?" "Yes. He joined the first week after he got back." "Can you get a copy of his membership application?" "No problem. Why?" "Just want to check something." "I'll bring it next week." At that moment, Grace came out and asked us not to talk about such things so she could join the conversation. I don't remember what we ended up talking about, but a few hours later I left with a sly smile on my face. The following week started off well. The divorce papers were filed. 3 serious people looked at the house, and the real estate agent was optimistic. Everything was going smoothly at work until Thursday. She was waiting for me in my office when I arrived. Maria Sanchez was the supervisor on my shift from midnight to 8 a.m., working in the warehouse. Maria got a promotion and was transferred to a new store on the other side of town. All I knew about her was that she was hardworking. Everyone agreed that she deserved the promotion and the raise. If I lost Maria, I would have a small problem that I didn't want to deal with. Finding people for the night shift is difficult, and finding good ones is almost impossible. "I hope you're not here to complain, Mrs. Sanchez." She smiled but seemed a little nervous. "Not to complain, Mr. Templeton, but I need some help." "Go ahead. I'll do what I can." I have two sons, 15 and 16. They both work after school. They have to catch the school bus at 7 a.m., but they have a hard time making it. Sometimes when I get home after 8, they're still in bed. They're not lazy, they're just tired. I have to rush them in the mornings, if you know what I mean. Do you want a raise so they don't have to work? No, not at all. They work to pay for college. They're both good students, but I have to drive them there. What do you want me to do? Help! I found it interesting that she wasn't complaining. She was a practical woman who kept her employees in line, but had problems with her own children. I smiled slightly at the situation and received a sharp reply. This isn't funny, Mr. Templeton. If you can't figure out how to help me, I'll have to find another job. It is funny, Mrs. Sanchez. You spend your night supervising a group of people who would run away at the slightest opportunity. They don't because they work for you, and you wouldn't let them. How could you allow two boys to treat you this way? Where is their father when all this is happening? Now I had really angered her. She began to stand up, fire in her eyes. For a second I was afraid I had lost her. You're an arrogant bastard, Mr. Templeton. Everyone said you were smart and fair. I guess they were wrong. I didn't come here to be insulted. Calm down and sit down. I have a possible solution. She sat down again, but she didn't look too happy. I'll change your shift. You'll start at 11. That will give you time to prepare the inventory for the night shift that comes in at 12. You'll work until 6. When the first of the day shift supervisors arrives, he'll take over for you at the end of your shift. You'll be able to get home in time to get the boys to school and maybe even make them breakfast. Everything's fine except for one small problem. I need at least 38 hours of work to keep my health insurance. I can't afford to lose my insurance. She was right, but I wasn't finished yet. Do you go to church, Mrs. Sanchez? Damn it, here you go again. You really know how to make a person angry. What the hell does my church attendance have to do with my job? You're very quick to anger, Mrs. Sanchez. I'd appreciate it if you'd calm down until I'm finished. And stop calling me Mrs. Sanchez. I'm not married. I'm sure you have some clever joke about that, too. I was starting to get annoyed with this woman. I sighed, leaned back in my chair, and immediately fell backward. For a moment, I just stared at the ceiling. I was surprised at how cheap the light fixtures looked. I heard her giggle as she looked over my desk. I was lying on my back like a little frog, and she was quietly laughing at me. She covered her mouth with her hand to hide her smile. I'm sorry. I was embarrassed by my clumsiness, and she was amused by it. It was hard for me to collect my thoughts as I tidied myself up. If I can't call you Mrs. Sanchez, what should I call you? Maria. Just Maria. Maria. I have two bosses, both Southern Baptists. Neither of them works on Sunday mornings, so I have to work. I want you to work from 6 to 12 on Sundays. That way you'll get extra hours, but that's not important. It's important to me. You pay extra for family health insurance, is that right? Yes. For $80 a month, the insurance covers my two sons. Maria, I'll put you on salary. That means your sons will automatically be covered by your insurance. It also means you'll get a small raise. And it also means I won't be eligible for overtime. Is that right? Yes. She was silent for a few seconds. She was a striking woman. Her hair was dark, but not quite black. Her eyes were coal black. She didn't have an ounce of excess weight on her. In fact, she looked a little emaciated. I tried to determine what kind of figure was hidden under her work clothes when she replied. Okay, I'll do it, but I don't know anything about being a daytime supervisor. I've never worked with customers. Don't worry about it. I'll work with you for your first 4 shifts. You can't mess it up. That's how my relationship with Maria Sanchez began. It was tense, to say the least, and at that point I couldn't imagine it turning into anything serious. I thought she would stay for 6 hours on Sunday morning, but we ended up working late into the evening. She insisted on learning everything she would be responsible for. I had nothing else to do, and I enjoyed her company. There was a small article in the Sunday paper about a fundraiser at the local American Legion. Major Cameron Wright was pictured in full uniform next to my beloved wife. I can honestly say that I had never seen her look so proud as she did in that photo. You would have thought she had earned those damn medals herself. I didn't get back to Billy until Monday evening. Grace called me at work and insisted that I come over for spaghetti. How could I refuse? Billy had a copy of Cameron's VFW application and a copy of his discharge papers. I told him about the photo in the Sunday paper, and he promised to get me the forms from the American Legion. Grace overheard at the beauty salon that Cameron had applied for membership in the Liberty Keys Country Club. Linda and I had tried to join once, but we weren't accepted. I didn't care, but Linda was devastated. Grace said that Cameron's application had apparently already been approved. The week passed sluggishly. I had already found a small apartment and usually went there right after work and drank at least 3 beers, sometimes more. The rent included basic cable TV, so I wasn't bored. Next week, I was supposed to get DSL internet. The week ended on a high note when I found an invitation to dinner with Maria and her 2 sons on my desk. I already knew her address and phone number, but she gave them to me anyway. It was awkward and could easily be interpreted as a violation of company policy regarding friendly relationships between employees. Just in case, I called my boss in Baltimore and explained the situation to him. With his blessing, I felt much better. I bought a bottle of wine but didn't know what to bring for the boys. I was a little nervous before meeting Maria's sons, but when they found out that I had 2 sons who were already in college, the evening went much better. Poor Maria was left out of most of the conversation. I tried several times to include her in the conversation, but she eventually frowned slightly, as if to say that I shouldn't worry about it. She seemed happy that I got along well with Armin and Martin. The evening passed too quickly, and we never opened the wine. On Sunday, I spent about 2 hours with Maria, who was starting her first real shift as a supervisor. It seemed to me that she was looking forward to my leaving so she could be alone. I took that as a good sign. She promised to call me if she had any problems. She also invited me to dinner that evening. Armin and Martin mysteriously disappeared after dinner, leaving Maria and me alone. I helped her clear the table after dinner, and we finally opened a bottle of wine. At first, the conversation was awkward. Except for Friday's dinner, everything between Maria and me had been strictly professional. She looked a little down when I explained that our relationship could cause problems, but she quickly added that she was sure it was nothing I couldn't handle. Although I didn't bring it up, Maria must have felt the need to explain her family situation. She had been living with the boy's father in Tucson, but one day he just disappeared. She lived there for 3 years, but he never returned. Her brother was a bricklayer in Philadelphia and convinced her to move in with him and his family. Eventually, she got her own place and has been working ever since to provide a better life for the boys. She has never been married. By the time I finished telling her about my marital problems, the bottle of wine was empty. Even though the topics of conversation were uninteresting, I still had a good time with Maria. We spent several hours together, so the amount of wine we drank wasn't a problem when it was time for me to go home. For a few days, everything was pretty normal, both at work and in my personal life. One evening, Billy came to me with information from the American Legion. We had a couple of beers and tried to figure out what to do now that we had all the information we needed. The couple of beers turned out to be too many, and Grace came looking for her drunk husband. The next morning, I was late for work, but no one complained because I was the boss and usually arrived early. On Friday morning, another unexpected surprise awaited us. 3 vice presidents of the company arrived. They gave the store a cursory look, but everything seemed a little off. Everything became clear when we went to lunch. Apparently, the company was in dire need of supermarket managers. At least that's how it seemed to me. By the end of lunch, I was offered the position of regional supervisor, responsible for 6 stores within a 30-mile radius. The salary and benefits that came with the job were beyond anything I could have dreamed of. Of course, I accepted. My deputy at my current store was also pleasantly surprised when I handed over all my duties. I left him with only one request, not to get involved with Maria. He winked at me and I smiled, letting him know we were on the same page. Maria was naturally unhappy that I was leaving the store, but she was happy that I was getting a promotion. I invited her to dinner, which was our first real date, so to speak. The boys were thrilled that we were spending the evening together. It was the first time I had seen her dressed up and with her hair done. She looked stunning. I think she took my promotion better when I told her I would still be working and living nearby. On the other hand, she wasn't happy that I would have to go to Baltimore for 2 weeks for training. On Sunday, I had lunch with Billy and Grace. We celebrated my good fortune and I tried not to drink. I planned to drive to Maryland that evening so I would be fresh for the first day of training. Billy wanted to know what I was going to do about Cameron and Linda. I told him we would have to put that off until I finished and got settled in my new job. Maria and I talked on the phone every day, sometimes twice a day. I felt like a teenager. She asked me about my training, and I made her tell me what was new with her. I always asked her about boys. She seemed to like that I was interested in them. My new job came with a lot of responsibilities I hadn't expected. It was important to participate in the community. I was expected to join as many community and social organizations as possible, including the local country club. I smiled when I was told that my position at the company would guarantee me acceptance almost anywhere I applied. Life was good. On my first weekend home, I saw Maria twice. I got my first kiss, but I felt a little awkward because I was technically still married. She asked why I was so unsure when I kissed her and laughed a little at my explanation. She teased me a little, and I think she enjoyed it. I certainly did. The company had rented a small office in one of the local business centers and had it fully equipped, including a secretary. They had done this before, and it showed. I was ready to start work on my first day. Among other things, my application for full membership at Liberty Keys Country Club was on my desk. All I had to do was sign it and pick up my club card. I decided that would be my first order of business. I was wearing a new suit and driving a new company car. Everything was perfect until I saw Linda when I entered the club lobby. She was standing with several other ladies wearing a cute tennis outfit. I didn't even know she played tennis. Suddenly, the pain and humiliation of what she had done to me came flooding back. I lost all my self-confidence and self-assurance just by seeing her. Trying not to attract attention, I attempted to walk past the group. Everything was going well until I heard one of the ladies say, "Isn't that your husband coming in?" I didn't turn around. I handed the form to the attendant, and there was a murmur around me. He disappeared into the back room, and I stood there waiting for something unpleasant to happen. I knew it would. It would have been nice to come up with a witty remark, but my mind was blank. "George, what are you doing here? This is for club members only, you know that. You're not going to join again, are you?" I really wanted to embarrass her in front of her new friends, but I couldn't bring myself to do it.